Hello, my name is Eric, and this is my EDL 851 Mod 8 video covering the legal aspects of teacher evaluations. For this video, there was 3 articles we had to review. The first article covered evaluation and issue overview. A big part of this article, highest performing teachers, you're going to have students gaining more than one ability. You might have students gaining up to a year and a half of ability from that solid teacher, whereas the lowest ranking teachers, you may only have a student advance about a half grade level. It's a huge disparity, and most teacher evaluations don't really difference between the two. I think 12 districts and 99% of the teachers satisfactory in their end of year evaluation. New tools need to be developed and have been developed that will recognize 3 different and federal requirements have basically needed to be included on the teacher evaluation. This has been something many people don't agree with for if you teach a course that doesn't have a state assessment, or the different level of students that you have. If you're in a high needs school, obviously the students are going to be a little bit more difficult to reach, and hopefully they still have gains, but they're going to be harder to come by. Second article was Teacher Evaluation Every Student Succeeds Act. This act basically said that the Secretary of Education was not to meddle in the state's education. The state's education systems were left up to them, and the federal government had to stay out of it. Of course, they are able to supersede this funding only when the states do what the federal government wants. We've seen this with the Common Core state standards and other incidences such as that. Another thing that was mentioned in the article was that school performance was more than just test scores. Needed looking at test scores. You can look at websites such as greatschools.org, and that's a pretty commonly used website to look at how schools are rated, and they use state assessments as one piece of it, but that's not the entire grading system. The rights preserving provisions in the Every Student Succeeds Act meant that if it was a right you had before, you still have that right, even about, and if you didn't have the rights before, you don't all of a sudden gain them. Teacher evaluations must be developed alongside teachers. This will help them to have more of a buy-in with it, and the teachers must also be trained as to how to be successful with the evaluation systems. The third article was the short one. It was Teacher Evaluation Heads to Court. Largely what I took from that article is that when teachers go to court against the schools, the cases either are dismissed or the states win. The teachers very rarely win. They lost almost all the cases. There was a small number, 2 or 3, where teachers didn't necessarily lose or the cases weren't thrown out. Many were still not that when you fight the schools, unfortunately, you're not going to win. Not to say that to discourage those from fighting what they believe in, but unfortunately it doesn't seem to be the way to go. In my district, we use the Keep 2 as an evaluation tool. It's a widely used tool. It's got 5 parts. You start evaluation at the beginning of every year. You evaluate, and you also must set goals. Our district not necessarily requires, urges you to make 2 to 3 professional goals for the year and hope you visit them throughout the year. If you are on the evaluation, I think your first couple years within the district, you're evaluated up to 2 times a year. Your third year in the district, it's 1 time, and then your 4th year, you're like when you start out with 1 time being evaluated, you aren't it again once every 3 years. So although you do the self-evaluation, nobody looks at them. If you are on the evaluation cycle, you have a pre-conference that our administrator allows you to schedule when you want to be observed. I was able to tell my administrator I wanted to be observed during math this year. She let me pick the exact date that I wanted to be picked. It wasn't a window. It wasn't a window of time, a window of dates. It was, I want you here this date, this time, and she showed up. Pre-conference, the teacher comes in, observes you, then you have a conference with them to discuss how things went, basically go over your evaluations with you, and then you have a post-conference, say how did they go, what did you think, what are your feelings. If you'd like to rebuttal or have a rebuttal, if you think you like how things went, anything like that, you can then voice your concerns then. In our district, if the teacher recourse that's available, if the evaluation was inaccurate, during the post-conference you can voice those concerns. I'm not sure how often that actually occurs. I've always been pretty evaluations and then they went well. I felt that the results warranted the way I was evaluated was warranted based on my performance. I do know that if you're unhappy with the way you are evaluated, you can challenge what was done, and a lot of times they'll work with you in that. If you're unjustly let go, we have no protections. That said, in the 7 years I've been with my district, I haven't seen anybody let go when they felt like they shouldn't have been let go. And she was brought back the next year because she the guise of force reduction. We never should have been brought back, and then she was let go the next year. I complained about it, made her be vocal, went to the school board, said she shouldn't have been let. It wasn't really heard. An example of a teacher suing a school district. A man whose last name was Daly, he sued the Board of Ed Morrill County School District in 1999. He had been let go over some corporal punishment in the classroom. After class, he had held a couple students back. One of them mouthed off and he kind of tapped him on his head. Students went to leave. He allegedly blocked the door and forced down. He ended up being fired. He sued the district, and in court it was found that he, according to him, he did not pop the student on the back of the head. He kind of just put his hand in and tapped him and told him they needed to think more. He maintains that he never actually refrained the students from leaving or kept them from leaving. He just kind of told them not to. As the case was heard in court, ultimately the firing was overturned and he received a 30-day unpaid suspension. Legal issues associated with evaluations and how I would deal with them once I am an administrator. I would ensure that I constantly have teacher involvement in everything that's going on. Every step of the evaluation process, I'd have teachers making sure that they knew what was going on. They could explain it to their colleagues. We'd have teacher trainings where everybody's on the same page. When everybody's on the same page, there's less confusion. Hopefully you have less legal ramifications because of that. Another thing I would do is I would constantly have the union involved in everything we're doing. If we're developing a new evaluation tool, or the union's going to have their say in it. Largely, you can tell when the union's not pleased with what's going on, you're going to have lawsuits. When the union supports what's going on, normally a lone wolf teacher is not going to sue. Another way to help maintain everything on the legal up and up is I would have constant a lawyer involved. We have a lawyer that I'm not sure how it works. I'm sure they work for tricks, but anytime something's going on, our superintendent with the lawyer, making sure that we're covering our backsides. At the end of the day, just doing that to keep us out of the courts. And I think, again, I would have constant teacher involvement, union involvement, lawyer involvement throughout the process of anything we're doing. That wraps up my video. Thank you and have a good one.